Erika talks K-dramas, C-dramas, T-dramas, HK-dramas. Erika talks K-dramas, J-dramas, Turkish dramas, Thai dramas. Erika talks Egyptian dramas, Indian dramas, telenovelas, but mostly K-dramas. Hola, everybody. Okay, I just finished this series, which was only 8 episodes on Netflix, and I've been waiting to see it forever. I watched it in less than 24 hours, and wow, I just loved it. So I wanted to record about it as soon as possible because usually if I put it off and start watching anything else, the feeling kind of fades and then I end up not talking about it. So I want to get this over with, and then I'm going to talk about two Gong Yoo movies because it's one of the stars of this TV series that I saw was Gong Yoo. And yeah, okay. So The Trunk was released on November 29th, 2024. It stars Gong Yoo as a kind of a drug addicted composer. He's the son of this very rich man, and his father's colleagues see him as ungrateful and kind of lazy. He's seen as a loser. He's kind of hit rock bottom. His character's name is Han Jung-won. And Han Jung-won is still desperately in love with his ex-wife. And his ex-wife is played by Jung Yoona. Her name is Im Soo-jung in the show. And she is an architect. And you learn like there's something very odd. Like her friend was talking to her, and this friend kind of indicates that things were a little bit messy. Like maybe she might have married her new husband before she divorced the old one, or we never really find out the answer. But Lee So-yeon, she's very manipulative. It's very interesting. You don't get the answers to everything in this drama, but it's probably that she's been manipulative since she was a kid. Like she might have met well when she was younger, but somewhere along the way things went wrong. And so anyway, she arranged for Jung-won to have a temporary marriage, which will last a year. And she went and she chose the wife that he would end up having. So the wife he ends up having is played by Seo Hyun-jin, who is one of my favorite actresses. And her character's name is No-in-ji. Throughout the course of the series, you find out more about the characters and their connections. And it's very dark, but there's also like the way they approach the failings, particularly of Gong Yoo's character, Jung-won, I did not find it off-putting at all. I mean, sometimes I'll be like, this is kind of gross, or I don't feel for this person at all. You do. I mean, he's clearly having issues. He overhears a couple of his workers gossiping about him and that sort of thing. Everybody's kind of like, he's so rich. Why is he working as this musician for soundtracks? Why doesn't he either buy the whole business or just stop working or something? But he does love music. He loves kind of different music. He does film scores for B horror movies and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff in here. Apparently, it is based on a book called The Trunk, which is the same title, by Kim Ryo-young. And I don't know if it's available in English, but I'm going to try to seek it out. We'll see. I thought it was a very good story from beginning to end. I'd like to see if there are any differences in the book. The K-drama was directed by Kim Kyu-tae, and the writer for the episodes was Park Eun-young. Let's see. So from the moment Jung-hwan meets In-ji, she actually has to come and get him at a police station. And it's very striking. And you learn, like, the story kind of not unravels. It kind of, like, it was very tightly wound at the beginning, so you have no idea what's going to come. And it kind of comes unwound so that it's like a winding ribbon. And it's just very cool how the characters connect, just the way the different characters are and the way they interact. So So-yeon, it turns out, is also in a temporary marriage. She and this temporary husband are having quite the passionate thing, but there's a lot of, and it's interesting because he is obsessed. I mean, not obsessed with her. He's in love with her, and he wants to keep the marriage going, and he's hoping he can convince her not to end it. She is doing this temporary marriage thing. I don't know, she has a love-hate relationship with Jung-won. She's kind of holding out this carrot. If he does the temporary marriage, after a year, there's a chance they might get back together. I don't know if she's really intending or not. She likes her control over him, and that's a big part of their relationship, her control. And you find out his father was also very controlling. So he has a lot of trauma, and I think he doesn't even realize just how much trauma. So Inji comes in, and she's cold, but she immediately reaches out to him in a way and kind of puts order in his life. She insists on making him breakfast and dinner, even if he's not going to eat it. There are certain rules that are protocol according to the manual that they have for these temporary marriages, and she's like sticking to it. He never reads the manual. So she'll just like bring up what the rules are every once in a while. There's a song, they have two different versions of it called Savior, and I like both versions. The female version is performed by Curie, and the male version, let me see, because I just added that to I think his first name is Isaac, Hung Isaac. Yeah, it's a very good song. It's not overbearing like a lot of these K-dramas play the songs endlessly. This one is very subtle. And so it'll play even when they're kind of talking sometimes, but it's not overpowering their voices. Thank God. I wish more directors and creative teams would take note of that, because it really is, with all these different sound systems that they're pushing on us, it's really invasive sometimes, the soundtrack. Anyway, that's just a side note. So Inji starts kind of helping Jungwon heal. And Soyeon is not happy about this because she wants him damaged so she can have him back and have control over him again. And you'll find out more about their relationship. I don't want to reveal too much because I think part of the joy of this one is really the unfolding of the story, which is also unfortunate because I think it has a lot to talk about. So maybe I could do another episode later where I'm like assuming everybody's seen everything in the show and really discuss it. The temporary husband of Lee Seo-yeon, I think I might have mentioned his name. His character's name is Yoon Ji-ho. The actor is Jo Egon. I didn't know very many of the actors and actresses that aren't the main characters in this one. Actually, I like the actress Jung Yoon-ha, who plays Lee Seo-yeon. I don't think I've seen her before. Definitely haven't seen Jo Egon, although he looked familiar. I don't know. But the friend of Soyeon, I recognize her from a few dramas. Joo Min-kyung, she plays Kang Yuna, and she's married to Oh Hyun-chol, who is played by Hong Woo-jin. I don't think I knew him either. Anyway, Joo Min-kyung was the best friend in Behind Your Touch, starring Han Ji-min. Loved that series. I do want to cover that at some point. The character that Joo Min-kyung played was kind of crazy. And one of the things I loved about that show was people would just kind of make some offhand comment. You would think it was just them kind of making a joke about what the other character would be doing or whatever. And you go and see, no, she really is playing the accordion, singing French songs or something by the shore. Like, just like, oh, what? That's random. So, yeah, so she was very memorable in that. And I think she was she was in the other one, Han Ji-min or not. Or she was in Something in the Rain. She was in one of those two, Something in the Rain or One Spring Night. Anyway, whatever. We'll get to those dramas eventually too. So that married couple, Yuna and Hyun-chol. Hyun-chol is worried about money, and like he kind of, why is Jung-hwan still working for him? And he's trying to get Jung-hwan to just buy him out or something. And Yuna is very, very unhappy because she's a housewife and she has to deal with the kids, and the kids are at this age where they're just like causing chaos like from morning till night, and the husband isn't really helping her out. And this is a very common thread. It's very difficult that it's not seen as a real partnership. I mean, he works, but he's not really taking his load in the child raising. So that's just something to note. And I think one of the messages is for this show that marriage is very difficult. There's no ideal situation, and just even you could have as much money as you want or be poor or, overworked or have very little work. Like, there's always going to be something that's going to cause issues, and you really have to communicate with each other. There were a couple instances because you find out about Inji's character's background, and I don't want to give too much because, again, I don't want to give it all away. But this whole thing started sort of when she was due to be married, and the wedding ended up not happening because a scandal erupted about her fiance. Eventually, spoiler alerts, she does end up talking with this ex fiance, and he kind of unloads on her and basically says it was all her fault and everything. So there's this kind of a theme of partners kind of forcing what they want on the other person. But it's like, but he was happy with her. You see these early scenes, and he did not seem to have anything holding back, at least that you saw. So I think there's more that we just haven't uncovered, and I don't think there's going to be a second season, so we're never going to uncover it. But it was kind of interesting. I think it's just like, to make a relationship work, you really have to be truthful with each other and don't just like unfairly blame the other person for everything, because it really does take two to tango. And there was some tangoing in the show. Love it. Anyway, there's very cute things where you find out about their personalities and stuff. And I think they put in elements of the actors and actresses' lives, or at least the main characters. I'm not sure how much it was, but it really struck me because Gong Yoo's Instagram was almost full of him going fishing and eating fish. So it was like almost every single meal they had fish in this show. And there were all these times he would go out near a lake and pretend to be fishing, but he didn't really want to kill the fish, so he was just sitting there. And I was like, was that them taking part of his life interests and putting it into the show? I don't know. And then in the very last episode, his character has a couple cats. One of them's a black cat, and then one of them's an all white cat. Well, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm sure I did because I can't shut up about the cat, but Gong Yu has this beautiful white cat that I covet. And I was like, is that his actual cat in the show? Is the black cat is? Because I don't think he showed a black cat before, but I don't know. He doesn't post very much anymore at all. And he doesn't really post personal stuff at all. I don't know if that's a reaction to events in Korea or what. But anyway, so I was like, huh. And then next scene, Seo Hyun-jin's character is hanging out with a dog, and it pans down. You see it's a dachshund, and I'm like, wait a second, because Seo Hyun-jin has a dachshund. And I'm like, I bet those are their real pets. And then I was like, I think all that fish stuff really was because of him. And I was like, what did they have of her in this? And he was like, well, maybe she's a soccer fan. I don't know. Her character stays up pretty late watching soccer games that are being broadcast from Europe. And I don't know. I don't know if that's her interest or not. I have no idea. But that would be really cool. I think I really like that they worked in their pets. And anyway, the ending of the show was great. There you find out Inji has like all these issues. So she's that ex-fiance who she didn't get over. She entered working into these temporary marriages as a kind of a revenge, sorry, because of what happened. She hadn't really gotten over the ex. And you have a couple cameos from her temporary husbands. I didn't recognize the first one, but it was Cha Sung-won. I think he was the one who was dying. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, he's a very popular actor. And the other cameo was by Jung Kyung-ho. He is one of the security guards in Prison Playbook, which I'm suffering through right now. He was the main character in the Korean version of Life on Mars, which I loved. And he's been in a bunch of other stuff. He was in Crash Course in Romance with Jeon Do-yeon. Wow, I'm not doing well with the names at all. Just so you know, I have to write down my entire work phone number before I recite it to people on the phone. I mess it up every single time. So this is not just me having problems with Korean names, like almost anything. Yeah, I should be writing all of this out. It also struck me like all of a sudden, oh, Jeon Do-yeon, who I'm going to mention in one of the movies that we're going to talk about, he was one of the other temporary husbands. And just, I loved it. It's interesting because, well, Lee So-yeon was supposedly the architect for the house that Jung-hwan lived in, and she had lived in it with him when she was married to him. And then you see her house too, and I don't know if she constructed that, but I guess she would have also. And it's like it's very like cold and big and stone. It's like just stone. And it seems like it's concrete. It's not like a smooth marble or something like that. It's like concrete. And there's this whole thing with this light fixture, which he calls a chandelier, and she's like, it's actually arts and blah blah blah. It's a great show. I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I would happily rewatch it again. There is some kind of explicit content. Oh, and I didn't even talk all about Inji. So there's a stalker, and you find out about him along the way. He's really scary. And his character's name is Tae-sung. The actor who played him is Kim Dong-won. So I don't know if that's really a secret that I should keep or not. Anyway, he's in after Inji for a very long time. He is an issue for the company that she works for, and he gets pulled into the whole mix. And then she's also dealing with trying to locate her ex-fiance. It was really good. And then they had the whole thing about meeting in the past, meeting several times means that you're destined to be together, that sort of thing. And I loved the way it was done in here. It wasn't cheesy at all. There's like no cheese in this one. Yeah, it was a very, very good show. Well worth anybody's time, I think. So give it a chance. And so now I'm gonna actually rewatch these movies so I can like be on top of it. But I'm gonna talk about my favorite. Well, we're gonna wait. We're gonna first talk about A Man and a Woman, starring Gong Yoo and Jeon Do-yeon, who I mentioned before and got like stuck on her name because I was like, oh, yeah. So she comes up twice in the episode. That's interesting. She is one of the stars of the Korean series Lost or Disqualified as Human, and I do want to rewatch that and talk about that at some point. And I think I'm at the place where I could do that now because it's a very depressing show, and but I think I could handle it now. We'll be talking more about Jeon Do-yeon, and anyway, so A Man and a Woman. It is from I think 2013. You would think I would have all the information written down, but you would be wrong. 2016, okay. And it was directed by Yoon-ki, and they play two Koreans in Finland. And that was what really struck me, was that it takes place a lot of the time in Finland. So they're two parents who are kind of lonely. You find out about their marriages, and that's kind of a whole thing. They end up very attracted to each other. So I'm going to rewatch the movie and I'll be right back and we'll talk about it some more. Okay, so I just finished rewatching A Man and a Woman. The Korean title is Namgwa-yo. Gong Yoo's character, Kim Kyung, is working in construction. He's in Finland. His little girl, Yurim, is going to a school. I think it might be some sort of special school for children with issues, various issues. And Jeon Do-yeon, her character is called Lee Sang-min, and she has an autistic son, Jung-hwa, and he goes to the same Finnish school as Kyung's daughter. They don't refer to each other that often by name, so it was like kind of hard to remember. In fact, it's only about 25 minutes into the movie he tries to get her name from her, and she won't give it to him at first. And then, anyway, we'll get to that. So they meet when their children are going to a special camp. Sangmin is desperate to follow to be with her son. She is afraid to be away from him and thinks he needs her with him. The teacher says no, the whole point of this is that they be away from you and, we'll take care of them. So she's kind of upset, and then she meets up with Kyung, and he ends up driving with her all the way up to the camp. So the school is down in Helsinki somewhere, and the camp is up near Tampere. And he says in the movie he thinks it's about a 3-hour drive or something like that. So I'll take that, as I've never gone up as far as Tampere, so I don't know. And there's this icy lake, and they were gonna. He jokes about crossing it, and or maybe she does. I don't remember. And they end up not actually doing it. She was just relieved to see that's the camp where the kids are, and from a distance. And so then they go to head back, and because of the weather, the roads are closed, so they're basically trapped in a town. Typical K-drama plot. Haven't seen it in that many movies, I don't think, but it's kind of funny. And it's not, they aren't trapped on an island, so that's also a difference. So they end up at a hotel. Well, no, it was first the sauna. So they find a sauna in the woods, and it's just like anybody can go in there and use it whenever. They go in, and he says, somebody's just been here. They end up sleeping together. Remember, they don't know each other's names. They have not even mentioned that they have spouses at this point. I was like, wow. So I can't really be behind that, but I mean, you find more out later. So then they have that one night, and they don't really continue then. And 8 months later, she's back in Seoul. Now she runs a boutique, a fashion boutique for her sister. And her sister is living the life, having all these foreign boyfriends. And she's in the United States. And I guess their father also lives in the United States. And so she runs the boutique in Seoul for her sister. She's also taking care of the son. You finally see Sangmin's husband, Jae-suk. He is played by Park Byung-eun, who also happened to play her husband in Lost. I don't think he's such a bad husband in A Man and a Woman. I mean, he does help out, but the majority of the burden of care of their son rests on Sangmin instead. She is afraid to give in and have their son go to a special school in Korea. She wants him to go to a regular school. She was talking about changing districts because he was acting up in school, and he's like, we need to face reality. Our son needs to go to a special school, and so she wasn't ready to do that. So he's not bad. He's there. And he does take part in the care. As for Ki-hong, he is also back in Seoul, and he's renovating a gallery. You see more of his family life. He's having some workers and or friends over. One of them is the gallery owner, and his daughter suffers from depression, and she's very afraid of strangers and stuff. And so she stays hidden until later. And what happens is that as his wife drinks, she starts to become accusatory towards him and starts acting a little bit strange. She's very jealous of him and worries that he is having an affair, which he is, but not with who she thinks, because she doesn't know about Sangmin. And it becomes very uncomfortable. And then their little girl comes out and has an incident because she's very upset. And I think as the movie goes on, you kind of realize the little girl is afraid that Gong Yoo's character, Kyung, is going to leave the family. In any case, his wife, who I believe is Munju, is played by Lee Wan, who I've never seen in anything, as far as I know. And Munju is mentally unwell. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear Prince meowing in the background. What's wrong? You're fine. I'm here. And so she ends up having an incident where she collapses that night. And she ends up in the hospital, and her mother meets with Kyung in the hospital. And she says, I'm going to take her home with me afterwards, and I'm going to take Yurim also and take care of them because Yurim wants to be near Munju. So they're kind of talking, and the mother says some stuff. And she's saying that Munju got married too early and is too dependent on him. And it's like there's something very mentally unstable about the wife. I'm not sure from the explanation exactly what is going on. But later in the movie, much later, Munju says to him, I wanted somebody who looks at me as a woman and not as their patient. I think I have the wording wrong, but that's basically the sense of the conversation. And that made more sense to me the second time around than it did the first time. I couldn't really figure out, and he really did. Like he was trying to take care of the family, but it was very difficult. Sangmin and Kyung end up running into each other and rekindling the affair in Seoul. And they don't directly tell each other things about their family, but along the way, they kind of find out stuff about each other. And by the end, spoiler alert, Sangmin announces to her husband, "Yes, I have a lover, and I want to be with him." And she runs off. But then Kyung, when he was going to meet her, ends up deciding not to do it. There's a lot of throughout the movie where she is pulling back because she, I think, is afraid to lose contact with her son and that sort of thing. She's never really done anything for herself. It's all about her work, where she's helping out her sister and, her son, who is getting bigger. And they had an incident one time where she was trying to get him to stop trying to drink from the toilet. And he ended up kind of hitting her accidentally with his body, and she got hurt. So the situation is over her head. Meanwhile, Ki Hong's wife is not well and is not going to get better. But his little girl is reaching out to him and doesn't want to lose him either. And so that's why at the end, he ends up not going to the hotel room with Sangmin. And then I think there's another time jump at the very end. And so Sangmin, you find out, is now living alone. So I'm guessing she divorced her husband. I find it interesting that her son is not staying with her. Her son is staying with the husband, although I think custody law usually gives custody to the husband because they're seen as the breadwinner. So she's doing pretty well. And then you find out she actually seems to be in Finland, or maybe she takes a trip at the end. I don't know. But somehow she ends up in Finland. She realizes that she just saw Ki Hong because he is also back in Finland. And so she takes a taxi and follows him to this restaurant. And it turns out he goes to this restaurant with his family. And she goes in and realizes that he's there with the family. So she ends up going to the bathroom and then leaving. And he sees her when she's leaving. So he runs out to chase her. And then he looks back at the window and he sees his wife and daughter. And so he ends up staying with them. And then there's still a little bit more. So Sangmin's driving off in her taxi and she gets a call from her ex-husband and she talks with her little boy. He sings this song from a credit loan bank that plays on Korean TV. And so he sings that to her and she's like, I love you too. It's very cute. As she hangs up, she starts crying. And the taxi driver is a woman and she is very kind. And so she just leaves the taxi parked. She had stopped because they were getting bad phone signal. And she goes outside to have a smoke so that Sangmin can have a moment and calm down. While that's going on, Ki-hong drives past with his family. He's sad, but he's made his choice. And so it's a very sad ending. And I think actually there's a lot of a social message that you're supposed to stay with the kids or something like that, or you'll be lonely. But it was interesting because neither married couple were really working as partners, as a team. Ki-young in particular was kind of taking care of his wife and never knew when she would suddenly start to have an episode. And Sang-min, like her husband was there, but they were never together in anything. They didn't really do anything together. They both took care of their son, but again, they weren't doing it together. Like he would be inside the house reading a story to the little boy, and she would be outside on the balcony and that sort of thing. So it was sad. It's a sad movie, and it had a very, you know, Koreans often talk about flavor. No, it was colors of things. And yeah, I would say it has a flavor of sadness or a certain color of sadness that it mixes the typical Finnish sadness of the landscape and the winter and the darkness and the Korean type of sadness where it's a melodrama and the romance doesn't work out in some way, and because of other obligations they are kept apart. And it's a very nice movie. I don't know. I give it an 8. It does have explicit content, also like Trunk did, but if you don't mind that, it's a good watch. And now I'm gonna rewatch my favorite Korean comedy, romantic comedy ever, Finding Mr. Destiny, which also stars Gong Yoo and actress Im Soo-jung. And I will be back after it's done and talk to you about it. We meet again in a post Finding Mr. Destiny world. So I just finished my rewatch and it was fun as usual. Before we start that, I did remember something from the trunk. First of all, its Korean name is Tronka. And so in there, one of them makes a joke or says something, and the other one, and asks the other one, and the other one says no, and then like says kind of the opposite. And there's like silence, and then they're like, I'm kidding. And I can't remember which one of them does it, but in A Man and a Woman, Gong Yoo's character and Jeon Do-yeon's character are sitting and having lunch. He says something and she says no, the opposite or whatever. And it's kind of uncomfortable. And then she says, I'm kidding. And I was like, oh, that's so cute that there's like the symmetry. And I don't know if that was intentional or not. I would have to look to see if there's somebody else that does the writing or if that was something that they ended up inserting for some reason. But anyway, I just thought I would mention that. So Finding Mr. Destiny was based on a 2006 musical by playwright Jang Yoo-jung, and she also directed the movie version of this. The script was written by Lee Kyung-hee. It was made into a movie in 2010, and I saw it a couple times pretty early on before I had really gotten into K-dramas, and so I was sort of into Korean movies, but I hadn't seen a lot. I saw it a couple times, and then it wasn't available, and then it was available again, and something about the description, the way they had it on Netflix, was confusing to me. And so I began to doubt that I had had the understanding of the movie that I should have had. So then I rewatched it, and so that's one example of sometimes movie descriptions are not right at all. So that brings me back to A Man and a Woman, because the description on Tubi mentions a fatal attraction, and I'm like, no wonder it's getting like kind of mid scores. People are thinking it's some sort of murder mystery or something, or like a thriller. That's not what A Man and a Woman is about at all. So, yeah. So be very careful when you look at summaries online, because sometimes the people writing it get a little bit dramatic. So, anyway, back to Finding Mr. Destiny. The Korean title is Kim Jong-uk Chagi, looking for Kim Jong-uk. And so Kim Jong-uk is this character that Im Soo-jung, the lead actress's, her character Jiu, went on a trip to India, and on the plane she was airsick, and a Korean passenger gave her medicine, and his name is Kim Jong-uk, and they kind of liked each other, but she didn't want to like travel with him right away. She's like, if it's meant to happen, we'll meet again. And then they did meet again, like a day or so later, and he was very sick, and so she cared for him, and they ended up sharing a hotel room, and they slowly fell in love. And things progressed. There's nothing like graphic in this one, but I think they probably slept together. Anyway, she left and didn't get clear information about how to reach him, supposedly. And he didn't have very much information about her either, so they never met up again. So now she is working as a stage manager for musicals in Seoul. It's 10 years later. This whole plane thing happened in 1999, so it's about 2010 in the movie. And she's living with her father, who is in the military, very strict, but he's very reliant on talismans and zodiac signs and that sort of thing. Not the Western zodiac signs, but the years like rabbit, ox, tiger, whatever. And he wants his daughters to get married. He's raising them as a single father. They're like mid-20s now, I think. So there's Jiu, who was played by Im Soo-jung, and then she has a younger sister, Jihae. Jihae is, I think, a school teacher, and she has a boyfriend, Dr. Jung, who she's hoping will propose to her. And their father kind of despairs because Jiu keeps refusing all these people that he's trying to set her up with. And she had just started seeing somebody who was in, I think, the Navy. I think that's what the uniform was, about a month before. And this guy proposes to her and she turned the guy down. Her father is at his wit's end. And he knows it's because of this Kim Jong-un guy that she fell in love with on her trip to India. So in the meantime, Gong Yoo, his character, Ki-jun, is a travel agent. And he is very straight-laced and nervous and kind of nerdy. And he keeps warning all of these all of these customers off from their potential destinations. If they want to go to Indonesia, he's like tsunamis and other locations would be like, what about the bombings and the storms and so every place has different reasons why you shouldn't go. And so his boss kind of yells at him because he is going to cause them to get downsized and fired. They're all going to lose their jobs if they lose the business. And so his boss packs him off to go and see Japan so that he can kind of experience travel himself and kind of loosen up. And instead, Gi-jun just has a horrible experience and kind of walks off. And I guess after that, he lost his job. And so he decides through this course of events, he meets up with this woman, I think from college, and it turns out that she's a scammer. She's trying to get money from all these guys who think that she's their first love. And so he ends up in this police station, and all the men start having an argument about first love. Is it important? Is it not? And so he decides he's going to set up an agency called First Love Agency to help people find their first loves. And so one of his first customers is Jiu's father, who drags her along with him and is like, we need to find her first love. She won't move on. And so we've got to find this guy. And so Gi-jun is, I think he's kind of taken by her immediately. Now, let me tell you, she's got a very messy appearance. She has a foul mouth at times, and she's mean, and she's just like, and it's just, I don't know. And he's very nerdy. And it occurred to me towards the end of the movie, it was nice that both of these people, who were gorgeous people, were kind of dressed down and made to look very different from how they can look. And it wasn't just like the girl was made, to look ugly or the guy was made to look nerdy or whatever, vice versa. And so she's resistant. She doesn't want to find this first love. And he is insisting. Her father is the actual client. He has to go through with this. So they start working together. He goes through some stuff and ends up finding out that there are 1,108 Kim Jong-uks. I don't know if it's in all of Korea because they do travel outside of Seoul. So it might be out all of Korea, South Korea, that is. So they go off on these different adventures. There's one where they hear that there's some guy who lives in a remote cabin and he's a mountain climber and he had been to India and all this other stuff. So they head out there, they go to this whole thing, and they discover out that his name was not Kim Jong-uk, it was Kim Jong-mook. They had to stay overnight because they had arrived really late, and it was just all this stuff. So you find out more about Im Soo-jung's character, Joo, especially during that little trip. She had been the singer of this theme song for a children's show, and that had been very promising and everything, but she didn't want to continue in that type of thing, and she was very embarrassed. Gi-jun's favorite song was that theme song from the show, so he starts singing it, not knowing that she was the singer of it originally. So you find out, like, she just had this whole theory, if you're meant to meet again, you will. And she also does this thing, like, she doesn't read the very ends of books because she doesn't think the endings will match what she had imagined. If she's eating a bag of snacks, she doesn't eat the very last one because it just makes her feel better to have that one left over. So she's got that kind of a philosophy. So she doesn't really want to meet this Kim Jong-uk guy because she doesn't want to cause it to end. And Gi-jun says to her, if you experience the ending, then you can start over. I mean, that's not his exact wording, but she's like, And so he continues working to find the first love. He is living with his sister, his older sister, who is this actress who plays very forceful characters. It's just very funny. Them as a sibling combo, great. It's just great. And then he has his brother-in-law who wrote this book, this really popular book a few years before, and hadn't been able to publish anything since. He hadn't been able to finish anything since. Or write anything, I guess. And he's really working hard on a book, and he wants to write a book about the Himalayas. And I think he's kind of inspired by the whole interaction between Gi-jun and Ji-woo. Then there's the niece, who's a typical kid, and she's just very sweet. So that's his family. And it's interesting because the characters are all so vibrant and different in their own ways, and it's kind of funny. So Ji-woo is working as the stage manager. There's this older musical actress called Soo-kyung, and she is played by Jeon Do-yeon, who is an actual musical actress. And I hadn't seen this film for many years because it wasn't available to stream in the United States for, legally for several years. And in the meantime, I had watched tons of K-dramas and more movies. And she is one of the wives in Love Featuring Marriage and Divorce, which is 3 seasons, is available on Netflix, and some other streaming services have some of it too, I think. I think it's on demand Korea. And she was the wife of, I think it was the professor. He was such a jerk. Man, he started up an affair and he just couldn't believe that she wanted to leave him. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Could not believe that she actually wanted to get a divorce and could not function without her. And then he was very dismissive when she started her new life. He was like, who's going to want this old woman? And she did. She got true love in the 3rd season. And yeah, it was great. I really liked her and the new boyfriend as a couple. They were very cute. Back to Finding Mr. Destiny. So this older actress, this more experienced actress, seems kind of mean, but she's actually pretty nice. And she stands up for Ju when there's an accident and makes sure that Ju doesn't lose her job. The headlining actress of the musical, you don't see her very much, but she's a real problem. She shows up late all the time, and then towards the end, there's something that causes Ju to come, she gets more attention because she has to fill in for this actress. So, and along the way, Gi-jun comes to the theater several times to discuss the case with Ji-woo. And there's misunderstandings, and so everybody thinks that they're dating. It's very cute and very adorable. But the 3rd time he comes there, Ji-woo is ranting to Soo-kyung about how she would never like Ki-jun because he was so annoying, the way he dresses his hair, the way he taught, everything. And she turns around and Ki-jun is there, and the look on his face, and he was just coming to bring her bag, which she had left behind. And so she was very sorry, and he was like so upset. He like runs off, and you can kind of hear him sobbing, and it's hilarious. There are so many wonderful scenes where things happen that you just wouldn't kind of expect. Just love it. he's falling for her and she's falling for him. And then, like, when they're in the cabin in the mountains, they end up kissing. We don't know if anything more happens. Then on the way back, there were all these experiences. I mean, they were really getting along. They would have fun little interactions. She was very different from him. He thought she was unsanitary and that sort of thing because she drank from his drink. He didn't like that. She used her own straw, but it still wasn't enough. It's coming, towards the show again. I think they have 2 shows a day. I'm not entirely sure. And Cherry, the headlining actress, can't make it for the show and they get very short notice. So they know that Jiu knows the parts and so they carry her off to the dressing room to get her ready. And she gets really glammed up. It's pretty amazing. And I don't know if that was really her voice, but if it was, wow, she can sing. So that was pretty fun. You get to see the most of the musical in that night. And Gi-jun ends up actually going in and seeing. He has news to give her. So right before he headed over to the theater, he had gotten a call from a guy who wanted to find his first love and did not know her name or where she lived or anything. And he started to describe the situation, and Gi-jun realizes it's Jiu. This is Kim Jong-uk, and he's trying to find Jiu. So even though Gi-jun is in love with her, he heads off to the theater to let her know. So he sees her give this amazing performance. He's blown away. Everybody's blown away. And then afterwards, he tells her, and he says he'll be at the airport. His flight leaves at 5, so don't leave later than 3 because you have to get there. He won't be back in Korea for a while if you miss him. And so she's like, okay, and she's not sure she wants to go. Oh yeah, and it turned out she had Kim Jong-uk's ID hidden in her diary and had not let anybody know, even when they started the case. And then at some point, Gi-jun has to bring her home. She is absolutely drunk. It's one of those typical scenes. He has to give her a piggyback ride. Her father is like, I've had enough of this. Here's her diary. I think she wrote it in India. And, maybe you can find something in here. And then Gi-jun finds the ID hidden in there. He's like, holy crap. I mean, he doesn't say holy crap, but yeah. But then Kim Jong-uk contacted him first. On the day of the flight, Jiu starts, working with the musical and then decides last minute she is going to go try to meet with Kim Jong-uk. And so she rushes off to the airport. And at the same time, Ki-jun is like really sulky at the office. He doesn't want to get any more business. He answers the phone when his brother-in-law forces him to, and he says, I can help you find your stupid first love. Just so funny. And so he and his brother-in-law realize at the same time they need to go to the airport. So they rush off, and his brother-in-law drops him off, and it's kind of funny. And then Gi-jun runs into the airport and sees Jiu talking to Kim Jong-uk. And he is so sad because he's like, well, it's over. And so then he's walking away, and then she sees him as she's leaving. So she runs over to talk to him. And he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, you didn't think I was going to leave too. And he's like, well, they end up talking. And basically, she met Kim Jong-uk to have the ending so that she could start over, just like Gi-jun said. And so they leave arm in arm. I don't know if they kiss at the end. I think they do. It's very cute. And then, okay, so Gi-jun had had a first love story too. He had been in love with this girl. He was always too shy to actually approach her for years and years. And then he went off to study abroad in Japan and got an invitation to her wedding in Korea. So he was trying to rush back to Korea to stop the wedding and let her know that he loved her. And at the same time, you see in this like before credits scene, Jiu was coming back from India to South Korea and she had a stopover in Japan. And something happened, I can't remember exactly what, but oh, I don't know. Gi-jun, he was just desperately trying to get a ticket. I think he didn't have a ticket at all. And Ji-woo didn't want to go to Korea. She wanted to delay so that she wouldn't end up meeting Kim Jong-uk at that point in 1999. Because they had arranged actually to meet again. And so she didn't want that ending at that time. And so she sold her ticket to Gi-jun, and he gave her some cookies. And that was the little they met before flashback that is quite common in love stories. But I think this was done really well. It wasn't overstressed or anything. And I think there was an element of if you're a coward about it, if you don't take the chances you're given, you're not really meant to have that love. But when you're really willing to take the chance, you can find your love and have it. I think that was the lesson. Maybe. I don't know. I just love it. Everything about this everything about this movie is just magical and wonderful. I'm remembering things every single time I watch it and noticing new things every single time. I'm sure I've noticed it before, but over the end credits, Gong Yoo is singing this first song over the credits. And I had forgotten that he was a singer, and that was really nice. It was a cute song. And oh, it's just a wonderful movie. Oh, Im Soo-jung, I haven't talked about her here. She is also in Search WWW, which was a really good drama. It was a kind of a different drama about these three women who were dealing with their work and love lives. And it's all about these search engine companies, these two rival companies. It was kind of cool. I know I've seen her in other stuff, but I can't remember offhand just what at this moment. Anyway, yeah, so I really like her as an actress, and of course Gong Yoo I like as an actor. So this was really fun, and it was great to see Trunk and A Man and a Woman and Finding Mr. Destiny all in one day. It was a nice variety, and it was nice for the first really wintry weekend we've been having in Michigan, or at least Southeast Michigan this year. So that was the Gong Yu episode. Oh, okay. So I'll actually talk about. So Finding Mr. Destiny was not available to stream for several years, as I mentioned, and I wasn't even sure I was remembering it correctly anymore. And finally, I was like, well, I'm going to do an order from a company over in Hong Kong. And so I'm going to order a bunch of DVDs. And one of the ones I ordered was Finding Mr. Destiny. Now, I was making this order for months, like adding and removing things from my cart for months. So I'm not sure if at one point I did have a version of this DVD that had English subtitles, but my order, when I finally got it, I had the version that did not have English subtitles. It had Chinese subtitles and I think Korean subtitles. I'm not even sure. And you can listen to it in Korean or Chinese. I don't know if they have both Mandarin and Cantonese as audio or just Mandarin. So I was like, man. And so I wasn't, oh, well, that was what I discovered. So I didn't open it for several months after I got it because I do these big orders and it's kind of hard to do something with all of the order at once. So I thought finally, after a few months, I'll go and watch it on the All Region DVD player downstairs because I never used that TV and, why not? That DVD player had died. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I come upstairs and I put it in the Blu-ray player because I remembered sometimes Blu-ray players can play all regions. And it worked. But then it only had Chinese subtitles, or I don't know if it had Korean or not. And I was like, well, that's great. I'm not good enough at either language to know. But then right around then, it showed up again in streaming services. Right now, you can see it on Tubi. I think you might be able to see it in a few other places. And I highly recommend it. It's a very fun watch. It's almost 2 hours long, but it's well worth it. And so now I know to be extra careful and check it like 5,000 times before I actually place an order for a DVD. It was great seeing it again. I've watched it a few times since it became available on streaming. Anyway, it was very uplifting after some of the difficult news that we've had this November. Just three little notes to add about Finding Mr. Destiny before I go. Ji-Woo's boyfriend from the beginning of the movie, I thought he was Navy. Now, I think the Navy might have planes, but anyway, supposedly he was a pilot, according to the Wikipedia description. He was played by Shin Sun-wook, He's been in quite a few K-dramas, and he's better known as a musical actor. Of course, in this movie, he doesn't do any singing, but I just think that's worth noting. And I think I was a bit confusing when I described Gi-jun's family. His older sister was not an actress. I was describing the actress behind the character, who is played by Jang Young-nam. His older sister's character, I don't know what her profession is, but she's trying to keep him and her husband going and causing less frustration for herself, and it's very funny. And also, the window of his Gi-jun's agency has the name of it. It's something like First Love Agency, but it's in Korean. And when you open the window so that it's only showing the one half, it ends up saying something funny. And I can't remember. I don't know if it was in the subtitles and I just missed it this time around, but I do remember it being pointed out in the subtitles somewhere where I watched it before. So it changes it to say something funny when the window is open. I don't know. I'm still thinking about doing a Buffy episode next. I should start preparing for the Squid Game episode because I want to get that done before Squid Game 2 comes out, which is actually coming out on December 26th, not on the 25th, as I said. Sorry. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at erikatalksdramas@gmail.com. That's ErikaTalksdramas@gmail.com. And you can look for me on YouTube, Erika Talks Dramas, all one word. And that's where I put my Casey episodes. Some of these podcast episodes go there. Sometimes there's something about the length or whatever. And I think I would have to upload it manually. And I haven't gotten around to that for all the episodes. You can also listen to this podcast, Erika Talks Dramas, on Podbean's, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And thank you for taking the time to listen to me if you did. And hopefully you'll come and listen to me next time. Have a good night.
Erika talks K-dramas, C-dramas, T-dramas, HK-dramas. Erika talks K-dramas, J-dramas, Turkish dramas, Thai dramas, but mostly K-dramas. Erika talks Egyptian dramas, Indian dramas, telenovelas, but mostly K-dramas. Do 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 do.